welcome to this second day of the Water Megacities and Global Change pre-conference. Yesterday, over 1,000 people participated in our first day. We're going to start the first session, Holistic Water Management, in a few minutes. We would like to remind you that if you are following on Zoom, you can listen to the English or French interpretation by selecting the interpretation icon. We suggest to the speakers to keep to a single language. Those of you listening on YouTube, you should choose your language and follow the link. The speakers will answer questions that you may ask on the chat, and you can also indicate to whom you want to ask questions. For any issues concerning the broadcasting and the quality of broadcasting, you can contact the technicians via the chat. Thank you very much. James Letton is our moderator for this session, and I give him the floor.
And welcome to all of you from wherever around the world you are joining us. My name is James Letton. I am a senior program manager at SIWI, Stockholm International Water Institute, and I have the honor to be your moderator for this session, for this thematic session on holistic water management. So with this session, we will try to make the link between the urban area and the basin, the watershed at which it's lying, and also between urban areas and the coastal area. So like a source to sea approach. So we have a little bit more than 1 hour for 3 presentations of 15 minutes each. And this will allow 20 minutes of question and answer after that, after those 3 presentations. So for you participants around the world, please feel free to use this question and answer module that is part of Zoom to ask your questions. So I will be assisted by Tristan. He will collect and collate those questions that we can ask at the end. So as it was said before, this session is also translated. So here, with my thanks to the interpreters for this for their contribution. But without further ado, let me first introduce our first speaker. She is called Maria Dubovic, and she is a researcher at the Aalto University in Finland, and her research is mainly focused on nature-based solutions and climate adaptation. So she will talk to us about development and implementation of a holistic framework for nature-based solutions actuation in urban areas. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, James. Right. All right. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Maria Dubovic, and thank you, James, for the introduction. Today, I'm gonna talk about development and implementation of a holistic framework for nature-based solutions actuation in urban areas. And this work was done with my colleagues in VTT Technical Research Center of Finland. You can see their names on the screen. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here is the summary of my talk. We're gonna talk about how to make MBS implementation in urban areas more robust, and this is gonna be so here's the brief summary, and let me jump straight into the first targeting urban water cycle. So traditionally, the urban water was managed and addressed by gray infrastructure solutions. However, they pose a lot of issues in the urban areas, such as the discontinuity of urban hydrologic cycle by reducing infiltration and increased amounts of seal surfaces. And that leads to some inevitable issues, such as generation of runoff quantity, excessive runoff quantity leading to floods, and sometimes even casualties. And also it poses issues about runoff quality management. Runoff is known to transport a lot of heavy metals and pollutants from urban areas. And gray infrastructure also doesn't provide any additional co-benefits such as environmental, social, or economic co-benefits. But if gray infrastructure solutions are integrated with nature-based solutions or with other green or blue infrastructure, they can address the discontinuity by providing more natural water loss through naturalized processes such as infiltration, evapotranspiration, and such. Next one. So the decentralization of the urban water systems must be underpinned by a robust monitoring framework, which is supported by clear indicators and the policy context for a successful integration of green-blue infrastructure and adaptive management of assets. The decentralization should be also underpinned by clear targets and vision, and monitoring and policy context, along with impact assessment that builds upon and determines the causal relationships between the NBS and their impact. Next one. This work was done under the Urban Nature Labs project, which was funded by Horizon 2020 funding scheme. And Urban Nature Labs project is an NBS project that aims to create and validate the performance of NBS in urban areas that are also locally attuned. And we have 10 cities and 3 of them are frontrunner. They represent a diversity of climates and also governance and organizational structures. And they are in these cities are in Tampere in Finland, Genoa in Italy, and Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Next one. So to highlight the importance of a robust monitoring scheme, we qualitatively evaluated the specific SDG indicators in respect with alignment with major policy instruments. And we also aligned them with the recently published IUCN standards for nature-based solutions. And all that resulted in a preliminary assessment scheme for the NBS or hybrid green-gray infrastructure that is underpinned by the policies and the SDGs and the other national and international frameworks. Next one. So here is a brief snapshot of the EU level and international policies and sustainable development goals considered. The upper part lists the EU directives related to water and also related to other closely related aspects such as biodiversity and air quality. But also we consider the disaster risk resilience framework, the Sendai disaster risk resilience, because NBS can be viewed as an umbrella concept that encompasses also disaster risk resilience, and also, as I said, the IUCN standards and the selected SDGs. Next one. So the first thing that I would like to highlight as a result is that water security in the urban areas and the city's resilience to water-related perturbations, whether it's quality, quantity, or other issues, they're closely linked to national, international policy measures and the other legal obligations that municipalities are required to meet. And although the EU legal frameworks provide a holistic assessment, they are not so successful at providing the metrics. And the decision makers are often tasked with interpreting the existing policies and a multitude of guidance documents for blue, green, gray infrastructure integration. And so the development of a robust and clear and straightforward and user-friendly framework for NBS assessment that is underpinned by policy and sustainable development goals will result in a more successful implementation. Next. So based on that, we developed a preliminary assessment scheme based on people, planet, and prosperity pillars of sustainable development. And you can see where we drew the exemplar indicators. And we also, some of the indicators were also co-created with stakeholders during the Urban Nature Labs project and the co-creation of NBS processes. So next, I'm gonna present some selected examples of this assessment scheme, sorry, based on the 3 pillars. So we're gonna start with the people. Next one, yeah. So people pillar focuses on the social domain. So whether it's participatory governance, whether it's social engagement, citizen engagement, whether it's social cohesion. So these topics are represented by indicators such as, for example, openness of participatory processes or stakeholder involvement in disaster risk resilience strategy development. Also topics such as awareness and new administrative units and other also closely related aspects such as perceived accessibility and safety of green spaces. Next. The planet pillar deals with and addresses the environmental domain. So since here we mainly focus on water, but also some other closely related aspects such as, for example, soil amendment or land use and land consumption, or also structural and functional connectivity that also has a lot to do with biodiversity and biodiversity enhancement of urban areas. This pillar deals with quite broad approaches such as the integrated water management, but also something really narrow, like reuse of sewage sludge as a soil amendment, for example, or it could look at forest area as a share of the total land area. Next. The third pillar is prosperity, and it addresses the economic domain. Although it is less studied because valuation of urban nature is a rapidly developing field. However, this pillar deals and it has indicators related to, for example, value of critical urban infrastructure and economic value of productive activities, and how that changes in relation to implementation of blue, green, gray infrastructure or its integration with gray infrastructure. But it also addresses topics such as public and private finance, which is one of the important topics about nature-based solutions and their contribution to the local or municipal development of financing and governance. Yes, next. So to conclude, the main message is that the evidence in science-based decision-making and policy-making must be informed by evidence, and that evidence must be delivered by a robust monitoring framework that is straightforward, that has clear indicators of performance and impact that also align with the national, international policy measures and that help also achieve their targets. However, it is critical to consider several aspects. Of course, this list is not exhaustive, but I'm going to touch briefly on some of them. So currently, there is no single NBS evidence base, and projects such as UNalab contribute to that evidence base by implementing NBS and generating evidence of performance and also developing guidance, you can call it that. However, the impact on various spatial and temporal scales is scarce, and also means of its detection, like its accurate detection, and it's critical to consider whether the scale of implementation and scale of monitoring meaning generating evidence is appropriate so that the impact is visible and it's not biased. Since the NBS projects are running not so long ago and they are not very long term, the temporal scale is also something that, so meaning measuring or evaluating on in long term is still to come. And also the difference between large and small scale NBS is critical here. Local conditions, whether it's environmental conditions, whether it's organizational, governmental, financial, you name it, different conditions, and these have to be also like locally attuned and fine-tuned to reach the desired outcomes based on the initial set of variables. And we are aware that there is abundance of impact indicators, and however, the clear and concise framework will clearly benefit, and this is clearly not a final point, and we will be developing this framework even further. Some next steps to consider is, like I said, there is a lack of evidence both in temporal and spatial scale, and we're working towards generating some evidence, but there is still a long way to having, a clear picture. And given the non-linearity of environmental and social systems, even economic, then it is not as straightforward as it may seem. Also, many mechanisms for uptake and upscaling and replication are not studied to full extent. So this is something to be added to our framework as well. Yes, so yeah, there were some references, but you can also see them. Yes, thank you, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maria. And from here, from this program project in Europe, we are now going to Vietnam and welcome Anh Nguyen. Mr. Anh Nguyen is from the University of Grenoble-Alpes in France. And his area of study is the impact of megacities on water quality in estuaries. So he will present, and his presentation will be around evaluating the response of water quality to pollutant loading in the Saigon River system in Vietnam. So using and modeling different scenarios for an estuary. So, Anne, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sam, for your introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Nguyễn Trường Anh. I'm a PhD student at University of Grenoble-Alpes. My study mainly focuses on the water quality dynamic in the tropical estuary under the impact of the megacity. And today, I will present to you an application of an estuarine biological chemical model, namely CGEM, to run some scenarios for the water quality in Saigon River. Next slide. My presentation includes 5 parts. I will introduce a megacity in Vietnam and its impact to the river water quality. And then, how can I implement a biological chemical model in this estuary? And finally, I will discuss 3 scenarios of construction wastewater treatment plant in this megacity to prevent the river pollution. Next, please. Nowadays, the urbanization and population growth have formed more and more megacities in the world. And there is a common characteristic of this megacity is the distribution of them in the coastal and estuarine area. And These areas provide a good ecosystem service for development of the city. And besides that, the estuary also considered to have very high self-purification capacity in remove wastewater from the urban discharge. And however, in many megacities in developing countries, especially in Southeast Asia, such as in Vietnam, are facing the problem of the estuarine pollution. Next, please. And in Vietnam, there is a megacity located in southern of Vietnam. And this is Ho Chi Minh megacity. And this megacity is have more than 9 million inhabitants. And this population growth rate is rapidly over 3% per year. And although there is a strong development in economy, Ho Chi Minh City is facing many problems in water issues. Next, please. The water issue, if you look at the two photos at the bottom of the slide, you will see there's some problem with the water quality in the urban canals of Ho Chi Minh City. Sometimes there are some mass deaths of fish in the canals 1 or 2 times per year, because these canals receive the domestic wastewater of more than 9 million inhabitants in Ho Chi Minh City, but there is only 20% of wastewater is treated before discharging to the canals. The problem comes from the lacking of the wastewater treatment plant in Ho Chi Minh City. And this canal is directly connected to Saigon River. And Saigon River is the river, if you look at in the top photos of the slide. Next, please. And Saigon River is the tropical estuary with 2 seasons, dry and wet season. Under the tidal effect, we observe that there is a pollutant cloud, which is the area with very low oxygen, around 1.5 milligram per liter, or high nutrient concentration. And these pollutants may be an issue to the water production for Ho Chi Minh City, which provide more than 90% of water for the domestic usage, and the raw water using in Ho Chi Minh City is less than 10%. And in our recent study, we found that the water quality in Saigon River is clearly have the impact from the urban discharge from Ho Chi Minh City. And therefore, Ho Chi Minh City government, they plan to build more wastewater treatment plants to ensure the water safety in this region. Next, please. So based on the modeling approach, we'll try to run some scenarios based on the construction plan of wastewater treatment plant. And this is based on the decision which approved by the Prime Minister in 2010. And the model will run for 3 periods, depends on the number of wastewater treatment plants and the total population. And in 2050, there will be more than 20 million inhabitants and with 12 wastewater treatment plants. And I believe that 12 wastewater treatment plants will be a huge challenge for Ho Chi Minh City because it costs more than $2 billion. However, this work is based on the development plan from in Ho Chi Minh City. Next, please. And to run the model, to run some scenarios, I use the model, the carbon generic estuary model. This is one-dimensional model, and this model was built based on the relationship between geometry, hydrodynamic, and biological chemistry. The strengths of the model are minimize the data requirements, but it still provide a good description of the hydrodynamic and biogeochemical processes. To run the model in Saigon River estuary, I mainly use the data provided by the Vietnam Center monitoring in 15 stations along Saigon River. The frequency of monitoring is from around 1 to 2 times per month. And the model is validated for the dry season in Saigon River. Next, please. On the right side of the slide, this is the validation result for the hydrodynamic and transport module. The hydrodynamic is validated by the tidal amplitude observation, and the validation for the transport is based on the salinity gradient. The validation of two modules will be make sure the transport of pollutants will be well simulated for the water quality. In the next slide, I will present to you the water quality in the dry season in Saigon River. And based on the statistic analysis for the model performance, it showed that the model have a good simulation for oxygen, organic matter, ammonium. This accepts for the phosphate with the bias around 20%. If you look at in the middle of each figures, you will see there is a huge difference between the concentration. This is the urban section, which is impacted by the megacity. This is so we can see that it's clear the Saigon River clearly have the impact of megacity, and beside that, the model also allow us to quantify the main processes for the oxygen depletion in urban section, and we found that the nitrification is the dominant processes in Saigon River, which is blamed for the low oxygen. Next, please. And based on the simulations, we also captured the movement of the pollutant cloud in the urban section. This is the one I introduced in the introduction. And we found that there is around 30 kilometers of the pollutant cloud, which move up and down based on the fluctuation of the tide. And in the right side of the figure, we can see the displacement of the pollutant that can move around 10 kilometers based on the tide fluctuation. And the problem for the water quality based on this result is the pollutant can go up to the water production plant in the Saigon River. And this is based on the tidal impact from the East Sea. Next slide, please. After the validation steps of the CJ model, I run 3 scenarios based on the construction of the wastewater treatment plant. The main differences between 3 scenarios are the nutrient plots from the urban canals. In 2025, there will be 4 wastewater treatment plants for 11 million inhabitants. But in 2050, hopefully we will have 12 wastewater treatment plants for 23 million inhabitants. And to be clear, compare 3 scenarios based on the wastewater treatment plant. So I keep the same environmental focusing for 3 scenarios. I only increase the temperature in the scenarios 2050 by plus 1.5 degrees. Next, please. As a result of the scenario modeling, we found that in the scenario 2025, the water quality in Saigon River can improve from the bad quality to moderate or good condition for the oxygen or the total organic carbon. The ammonium also can improve, but is still in the bad condition based on the Vietnamese regulation on the surface water quality. And in the scenarios 2050, we found that even with 12 wastewater treatment plants treated for around 60% of wastewater from Ho Chi Minh City, but it cannot improve the water quality in Saigon River compared to the scenarios 2025. And besides that, we always saw that the ammonium always in the high concentration in 3 scenarios. Next, please. So, in conclusion, based on the modeling approach, um, uh, the CZ model can simulate the impact of the urban discharge from the megacity Ho Chi Minh City to Saigon River estuary. And the model also can capture the main processes which strongly happen in the water column. And here, this is the nitrification. And based on the scenarios result, even with 12 wastewater treatment plants, it is still not enough to improve the water quality in Saigon River. And we propose some solutions. And to improve the water quality in Saigon River, the first one, we should improve the treatment capacity for the ammonium in the wastewater treatment plant. And beside that, not only construction of wastewater treatment plants, we should apply alternative urban wastewater management, for instance, in a nature-based solution. And with these solutions, it can be much more effective and cost less money than the current plan of Ho Chi Minh City. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne, for this very interesting presentation. So indeed, to meet the pollution of 23 million inhabitants, here again, we will need the collaboration with nature. Thank you for this modeling exercise. Our last presenter, we are going to leave Vietnam and going back to Europe. I have the pleasure to introduce to you Sam Azimi. He is Deputy Director of the Innovation Division of the Greater Paris Sanitation Authority. So we are we are in France now. He coordinates the scientific research of SIAP and provides expertise on water treatment processes and on environmental impact of the SIAP activities. So his presentation will go about an integrated management of the Île-de-France, Greater Paris sanitation system. So Sam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody, or good evening. I don't know where you are, but it's a pleasure for me to be there. So as said James, I'm going to talk about the integrated management of the wastewater in the Paris region, area in France. Waiting for the slides. Oh, thank you very much. Perfect. So this research project is coordinated by Vincent Rocher and I. We're leading the innovation department of the SIAP, and involves many other scientists from all over the world, from China to United States, passing by Europe. So I'm the spokesman. I have the honor to be the spokesman of all these people. And this project is supported by the Innovation Research Program of SIAP, which includes 2 research projects, Mokopi and Messen. I will talk a little bit about that later. Next, please. Before that, what is the sanitation system, sanitation network of the Paris area? The SIAP operates more than 400 kilometers of pipes and 6 wastewater treatment plants to handle the 2.5 million cubic meters of wastewater produced each day by the 9 million inhabitants. That covers the Paris city and more than 280 municipalities around Paris. So representing something about 2,000 square kilometers. Next, please. The outfalls of the Siap goes to the Seine River, to the River Seine, sorry, and which is a very small river flowing through a very urbanized area. We can see that looking at the ratio between the inhabitants, number of inhabitants, and the flow rate. Looking at this ratio, we can see that Seine is 60 to 250 times much more impacted by population than other main rivers, such as Rhône or Rhin. In another word, during some periods, during summer, the flow rate of the Seine is about 100 cubic meters per second, while the Siap represents 30 cubic meters per second. Which means that Siap and urban activities are the main tributary of the Seine River during sometimes around on summer. And that means that human activities can have significant impact on its quality. Next, please. So to make sure that the impact remains low, the Siap and all Paris area stakeholders have undertaken huge transformation of the wastewater facilities and management to be compliant with the Water Framework Directive. That means that it's not sufficient to remove only the nitrogen and phosphorus as requested by the Urban Wastewater Directive. That means that we have to make sure that the surface water quality meets the requirements of this actually it's not new, not anymore, water directive. Or we have to make sure that the treatment is adapted to the surface water quality and that the receiving water have the ability to receive the residual nutrient released into it. Next, please. You can. So to do that, we need high performance technologies, which have been implemented for the last 20 years in our treatment plants. Advanced technologies, which means that we need high level of expertise to be used efficiently, and advanced technology means that there is a need for lots of chemicals and power to work efficiently. So if we look at the current figures of the Siap, next please, sorry, we can see that chemicals reach something about 30 million euros per year, and energy reach also something about 30 million euros per year. Knowing that half of this energy is already provided by the biogas produced on our own facilities. So the main objective becomes to be compliant with the Water Framework Directive, while limiting all these operational costs. Next, please. So to reach this objective, the Siap has launched his innovation research program, including all his innovation activities to support and help operators. There is two main research projects in this program, which are MOCOPE, focusing on the sewer and the wastewater treatment plant, and the Mécène Innovation, focusing on the river. The main objective of these two projects are to have a better understanding of this compartment and to give adapted tools for their monitoring and as decision-making tools. Next, please. Here are some examples. I'll go quickly about that. Examples of solutions designed and developed in these research programs. We have the assessment of the biomethane potential and the bacterial contamination. We worked on this subject, and we reduced significantly the response time of the BMP from 20 days to 48 hours, and for the bacterial contamination from 48 hours to 10 hours. That gives to these methods a real operational perspective. We also worked on three-dimensional fluorescence spectroscopy to give a better understanding of the organic matter content of the wastewater and the river water. And we produced some mathematical tools, as we'll see on the next slide. Next, please. So how are we going to toward an integrated management of the sewer system, knowing all these solutions? To understand that, we have to imagine the whole system composed by the sewer network on your left, the wastewater treatment plant, and the river. Currently, yes, okay, we are looking this system only from the wastewater point of view. We are looking if the outfalls are in a good quality. Now we have to look at all the system from the river point of view. We have to know what is flowing through it, considering its quality. So we have to implement sensors and probes at the specific and strategic spots for the measurement of its quality. Talking about quality, we're talking about dissolved oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus mainly. This data produced will help to calibrate and validate a model allowing to predict the quality of the water for the coming next hours at the downstream of the sewer system. And you cannot see very clearly. It gives you the output set point, for the wastewater treatment plant, fitting with the water quality of the river. Next, please. Now we have already implemented 3 strategic spots, Suresnes, Bougival, Andrézy, for the sensors on the river, and we're working on a real-time model. Next, please. Because SIAP has already a model allowing to simulate the quality of the river. This model is based on the main biological processes involved in the river. It has been calibrated and validated using all this data provided by the sensors, and the operators utilize it for their maintenance schedule and maintenance program. The objective is now to, based on this model, to work on a lighter model able to work on a real time to give the prediction and the output set point. Next, please. Talking about the sewer network, it's the same idea. We have first to implement different sensors and probes adapted to the wastewater at different spots of the sewer system. These sensors and probes, all this data will feed a model here called SIMRA, which will give the quality prediction for the coming hours at the entrance of the wastewater treatment plant. That gives the constraints, the input constraints of the plant. Next, please. Currently, we worked for the last 2 years on the quality of the sensors and probe to implement, knowing that it's difficult to have measure in the wastewater, in the sewer system. So we have now a good idea of what has to be implemented on different spots, and that will feed our real-time model. Next, please. Considering the model, SIAP has already implemented a real-time model which is based on the weather forecast, the field data such as valve positions, the flow rate, or the level of the wastewaters, including incidents and maintenance information, which is able to give a water level and water flow prediction at all the points of the sewer system. It gives also some optimizing solutions. The idea is now to complete this real-time model with quality information to give the constraints of the wastewater to be handled. Next, please. So now that we have on one side the output set point given by the river model, and the other side the input constraints given by the sewer model, we have to imagine how to use this information to make the best decision. And that's, next please. And here we are working on the plant level model composed by different physiochemical and biological processes with two main objectives. Next, please. The first is knowing the constraints, knowing the set point to reach. The model has to say if the plant is able to do this, if the thresholds can be reached, and if the objective can be reached. It also has to say if yes or if not, what is the best dispatching scenario for operators to do to reach these thresholds. And the second objective is, once fixed this objective, to say what are the environmental and economical costs of these choices, talking about euros for each processes, or talking about each kilogram of CO2 emitted using these different dispatching rules. Next, please. Where are we now? We just finalized the first version of this full plant model. Gialuzu, who is the PhD student who worked on this subject, will defend his thesis by tomorrow. And we have already unitary process models for physiochemical and biological treatment facilities, which helps us already to give answers to our operators. That was the main issue 5 years ago, but now we have a new issue, the new challenge. Next, please, and last. It's to fit with the objective of bathing. As you know, Paris will organize the Olympics and Paralympics game in 2024. And the idea is to keep some bathing areas for the Parisian people to swim in the Seine River. So we have now to introduce also the bacterial contamination in all these subjects, which was not the case, and we have to go further than the only water framework directive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you to the three panelists for their contributions. We are now going into a more question and answer session. And while we are in Paris, I propose that we remain a little bit in Paris. And there is a question from the participants to Sam. Is in the design and the development of your solution, do you integrate direct stakeholders to ensure a better cooperation from local communities, for example, from industrials?
For sure, yes. First, to implement facilities, whatever we're talking about, we are organized around a master plan, a sanitation master plan. Allowing to test different scenarios, giving what are the best solutions to reach water framework directive or bathing solutions. So we have all the stakeholders are involved in this, in the design and construction of this master plan to to make the best decision fitting with all the objective of each of them. I don't know if it's clear.
And depending on the capacity, the carrying capacity of the recipient river Seine receiving your effluent. Usually a wastewater treatment plant is bound to certain effluent standards. Now I understand that this can fluctuate depending on what is the input and what is the quality of the recipient river. Does that mean that you have like a fluctuating standards that you, what is the relationship you have with your river basin organization, your obligations? Is this fluctuating depending on the receiving capacities?
Unfortunately not. You're right. That is the way we should think and work to respect effluent standards and to limit environmental costs, to adapt the outfalls quality to the river capacity, ability to receive that. But our plants are ruled with specific standards irrespective to the surface water quality. So we are now started discussions with our regulation authorities and our river basin organization to go further on this subject. We like to imagine that once our integrated management tools will be operational and will be able to give treatment costs and environmental costs, that will while keeping the good quality of the river, we will have objective figures to base our discussion with all these authorities.
Okay, thank you. We also have a question for Anne. Can you explain a little bit more about the pollutants moving upstream? You talk about 10 kilometers. Is that 10 kilometers upstream the city, or can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Okay, sure. And if you remember well, in the beginning, I talked about there's a pollutant cloud in close the urban area, and because of the effect of tidal fluctuation, and in Saigon River, we have the tide. It can move up during the first 6 hours, and after that, it's based on the receding tide. It return the original position. So in every 6 hours, it go up, and after 6 hours, it go down. So this is the reason why we always saw that there's 30 kilometers of the pollutant, and every 6 hours, they can move up and down in 10 kilometers. And based on the simulations, we found out this pollutant cloud, it is located in the outlet of the urban canal, but it's not only in the downstream, but sometimes based on the flooding tide, it can go up more than 10 kilometers. And this is the reason why there's the threat to the water production in upstream.
Okay, thank you. And in your conclusion, you propose to use nature-based solutions. Do you have any in mind, any kind of nature-based solution that you have in mind that could be applied in the urban area?
Actually, currently, our team we have a project that applied the natural-based solutions in the Ho Chi Minh megacity, and we just started this project. But I think we use, like, for instance, the wetland on the wetland in Broof of. So we try to disconnect the how to say the wastewater network in Ho Chi Minh City, in the urban of Ho Chi Minh City, and after that we connect to the wetland, and so later I will apply the model to see the improvement on the difference between the water quality if we connect with the nature-based solution. And I think this project, we can present some results after 1 year. And this project we applied in Ho Chi Minh City, and at the same time we also have the application in the Lyon. This is also a city in France, to compare the two applications between two different cities. So, and I also received one question about, he said that, for instance, in megacity like in Vietnam, the construction is more important, because now the land cover is not enough for the city. So how can we apply the nature-based solution? And I think the government, if they consider to protect the water quality in Saigon River, which provide 90% of the raw water for domestic use in Ho Chi Minh City, so we try to find the solution to disconnect and connect to the nature-based solutions, and after that release to the urban canals. So I think there's still some possibility to connect to the nature-based solution.
Okay, thank you. I have the same question to you, Maria. Could you provide us some concrete examples of nature-based solutions that you know of, and the ecosystem services they provide?
Yeah, certainly. Well, for example, what Anne was talking about, if we speak about wastewater purification, then clearly the wetlands, the wastewater-driven wetlands are extensively used. Of course, it has some, other adverse effects because it's, untreated waste. But for example, you're asking about different nature-based solutions and their ecosystem services. Do you want an example for like water management or anything else?
No, there are some questions in the chat about what kind of urban nature-based solution can be used in an urban context where indeed the land cover, there is high competition for the land cover.
Yes, definitely. Well, since nature-based solutions provide a lot of co-benefits, not only when we speak about runoff reduction, but it's also, for example, promoting well-being or bringing added value to the neighboring, for example, businesses or homeowners, then the city planners can integrate NBS in the city planning, but NBS that can be integrated in urban environments, there are many, and many NBS are kind of small scale. For example, green roofs or rain gardens, they can be at like a site scale. We're not talking about something big like like river restoration, although in cities river restoration is still considered feasible. For example, when it's called daylighting, when the river was, for example, channelized and then it's brought to kind of daylight again. So there are many types of NBS that can be implemented in the cities, and they bring co-benefits, but of course they bring some trade-offs, and benefits as well as trade-offs should be analyzed in the planning stage already, so that it's not coming as a surprise. But yes, if I would list NBS, there would be many, like rain gardens, bioswales, for example, and green roofs, also wetlands.
Yeah,
everything's considered.
And in your presentation, you clearly highlight the different benefits and co-benefits that one nature-based solution can provide. And on another side, if we want to achieve certain ecosystem services, they are provided by different nature-based solutions. So my question is a little bit about how do you govern and also finance those nature-based solutions, in the sense that, as you say, one nature-based solution provides different co-benefits of interest to different ministries. For example, if we talk about groundwater infiltration and water infiltration into groundwater, so aquifer recharge, that is by a wetland, for example, the wetland is managed by the Ministry of Environment, but it provides services to the biodiversity. Indeed, that is of interest for the Ministry of Environment, but also for the ministry in charge of natural water resources. So those different co-benefits, how can we attract the interest and the funding to finance those NBS? Do you have any experience in that?
Yes, I can give some examples, and these governance and financing guidelines were developed in UNalab project, and anyone who's interested can browse to the website. But if briefly, NBS is mainly managed on the municipality scale. So it's not, maybe when you talk about ministries, is, you know, a bit higher level, because NBS, as any land use changes or developments in the city, are managed by municipalities. So municipalities clearly have different organizational structures, and they're managed differently, but NBS can be integrated, for example, in the climate adaptation strategy, or biodiversity strategy, water management strategy. It can be a part of a city development plan, for example, and that will kind of bridge those organizational silos that usually exist between different departments in the municipality. And one way how to promote the development of NBS is, of course, generating evidence. Numbers attracts more investments than just words. So if there is evidence that a certain NBS generated these impacts, for example, attracting governmental changes or financial changes is possible. One way, of course, is to attract private financing to NBS financing, not only using the municipal money for that. Of course, that's not as straightforward, and maybe there could be some incentives for private sector engagement, and also it's a question of public procurement. However, these can bring organizational changes as well, when different departments in the municipality cooperate, and they maybe establish formal or informal networks, cooperate with citizens, other stakeholders, and attract private financing.
Okay, good. Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you so much, Sam and Anne, for your intervention. I have another 30 minutes to thank you. Thank you, the organizers and the interpreters. This is the end of the session. Thank you all for your collaboration, for the questions, and yes, hoping to see you in the next session. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye to all.
Thank you.
The Greater Paris metropolis is a young metropolitan area with a population of 7.2 million people. It encompasses Paris and 130 neighboring municipalities. It is a worldwide metropolis, attracting investors, tourists, and businesses. The Greater Paris metropolis improves quality of life, to oversee the territorial balance, to foster a sustainable model of urban development, and to shine internationally. In 2016, the Greater Paris metropolis launched a call for projects entitled Inventing the Greater Paris Metropolis, Europe's biggest architecture and urbanism competition, in synergy with the Greater Paris Express. The principle is simple. Municipalities propose sites for development, and project teams comprising investors, architects, town planners, landscapers, and commercial operators submit their vision. The aim is not simply to present the most architecturally attractive project, but to take the requirements of future users into account. Innovation and environmental excellence are the two main criteria. This project challenges established ideas of what it means to build the city. Construction has already begun on the winning projects from the first edition, while the second round of winners was announced a few months ago. The knock-on effect in terms of financial investment and home building are already impressive. The ambition of all these projects is to build an innovative, sustainable and resilient metropolis. These projects are reimagining the way we work, live and experience the city. They prioritize resilience and sustainability, while making the metropolis more attractive and more practical. Inventing the Greater Paris metropolis is placing the Greater Paris metropolis at the very forefront of urban development.
Mesdames et messieurs, notre seconde et dernière session du jour, intitulée
Ladies and gentlemen, the second and last session of the day, Service Continuity, will begin shortly. Ms. Graciela Schneider-Madanes will moderate this session. You have the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Paris to this international assembly, as well to panelists, to the audience, and all the people involved to the success of this endeavor. My name is Graciela Schneider-Madanes. I'm an architect from Argentina and a geographer from Sorbonne in France and professor emerita at the CNRS, which is the National Center on Scientific Research in France. As a member of Omega, the name of the conference, steering committee, I am very honored to chair this session and before we start the three presentations, I would like to comment some little points on some details on the organization. I believe it's going to be an interesting and exciting moment. First, because of the composition of our three authors, three panelists, an engineer, a geographer, three geographers, an environmental scientist and politist. But also there is the question of the area study. We have one megacity, but we have two emerging cities, Abidjan and Jaipur, which have all the same size. And finally, we have very interesting keywords that you will discover during the presentation. So the main goal of this session that combines service, continuity, and sustainable solidarity is twofold. At the first glance, these two topics are usually considered separately. Indeed, the presentations, if you listen carefully, make possible to import questions from one to the other of elements of diagnosis, interpretation, and creation. So and if you listen even more carefully, you will find the new words and orientation of the Sustainable Development Goals for Water and Sanitation, number 6. Okay, so I invite Professor Anil Jyoti Vyas, I hope I pronounced well your name, to address the audience, but I will make a little presentation of himself, because Professor is working currently at the Department of Civil Engineering at a leading, very well-known worldwide, leading a private university, Manipal University in Jaipur. I have been in Jaipur, and it's a wonderful city, even with the problems it has. And Professor has a large 3 decades of experience combining teaching, research, and consultancy projects. And this goes to all the big donors in Asia, Africa, and Europe, but also to the community projects like the ones funded by the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation. So his focus is on sanitation, fecal sludge, urban water, health, and hygiene. So we are at the core of our concerns. Please, Professor, the floor is for you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ms. Gracila. Thank you very much for a very good introduction. I'm grateful to you, grateful to the organizers for giving this opportunity. And it's a privilege also to speak in front of audience across the globe. Thank you very much. And I am introduction has already been given by Ms. Gracila, so I'm grateful. And we can move further to the first slide. Yeah, can you move to the slide? Yeah, just so truly speaking, when you are working in a water sector or water and sanitation sector, if you look into the scenario, the situation is quite similar to almost all the cities, the mega cities, the metro cities across developing nations, whether it is in India, whether it is China, whether it is any other country in Asia. I mean, the situation remains the same. And one of the biggest challenge what we developing nations right now facing is the severe water scarcity. And there are no proper planning, management, and this has given a big challenge to the population migrating to the urban areas. Unfortunately, India itself is a big country, and we were not able to integrate water and the wastewater management system since we got the independence in 1947. And since then, the situation has going from bad to worse. And the most severe sufferers are the urban poor, who come and settle down in the urban peripheral areas, and they are bound to buy a very high costly drinking water, which is unsafe and leading to the various diseases. So Jaipur is the capital city of Rajasthan and one of the biggest state in India. almost 33 districts and 295 developments. I do not go, but the main challenge what we are facing is it is one of the least rainfall we are getting in the Rajasthan state, and average rainfall in the Rajasthan state is 318 mm. Can you imagine? And where the national average is around 1200 mm. And there are the portions in the western Rajasthan where the average annual rainfall is just 150 mm. And the dependency you can think. And people, for a pot of water in the western Rajasthan, they have to move almost 10 kilometers a day just for a pot of water. So it's one of the biggest thing. If you look the way that urban population started moving to the urban areas, so all the load has come to the groundwater, underground water, and all the 237 blocks in the state are they are in dark zones. Dark zones means the amount of water extracted is almost twice the amount of water which has been recharged, and this is one of the big issue, and it's almost drought-like situation in almost 26 districts out of 33 districts in Rajasthan. We had only 15 to 20% of the rainfall in the period 2012 to 2017, and 161 towns we get 24 hours water supply once in 24 hours. In 49 towns we got once in 48 hours, and in 12 towns we got once in 72 hours. So you can imagine the impact. And with this, where the water is the human right. United Nations has already made it as one of the right, but unfortunately we are not at that level, I'm sorry to say. And the annual water table loses is 1 to 3 meters. Being a civil engineer, I always used to say that every year we are losing 1 story of the building through the depletion of the groundwater. And next slide, please. Focus areas obviously is the Jaipur, and we see that population is almost 4 million. I mean, it's unofficial figures are around 4 million, and we will have the next census in 2021. And the total demand for the city is almost 500 MLD, million liters per day. And we have to, and there are no sources. We used to get the water from one of the lake, which was used to provide the water supply to all the city residents. But unfortunately, now it is a playground. I mean, it has been encroached by the builders. It has been encroached by the people, and there's no place for the recharge. So what to do then? And then I think this is the situation which is arising in almost all cities, developing nation cities, and which are beyond control of, the politicians. They only look for their votes. They don't look into these issues, and the issues keep on emerging. So what to do then? 275 MLD is brought from Bisalpur Dam, a dam situated almost 120 kilometers from Jaipur. And bringing water is not 1 liter of water. So all transmission lines and the treatment plants and everything, it's millions and millions of dollars which has to be spent, and who has to pay? And then we have to depend on the various development, Asian Development Bank, JICA, who are funding that one. And it is estimated that 100 MLD is from the 2,000 tube wells. These are the 2,000 tube wells which are official tube wells, but almost 20,000 tube wells are unauthorized. Look, this is the number of tube wells which are running in the city, and there's no control on that one. I'm not here to highlight the key, main deficiencies, but this is how the situation is going. And there's a gap of 125 MLD. Every day, this is a gap. And who has to burn this gap? Mainly the urban poor. So all 13 blocks are in dark zones as per the Central Groundwater Board. Rampant construction, concrete flooring, this is all normal scenario which is happening in almost all the developing nations. And the real estate developers are drawing groundwater for construction and drinking purposes. And many areas are almost dry. So this is the scenario which I am talking today. And the population is increasing. There's no control on that one. People keep on moving to the urban areas, and utilities are having the biggest challenge. Next slide, please. One of the major challenges in the supplying potable water, in all developing nation cities is the non-revenue water. It's around 40 to 50%, and this is the official record. And there has been very less survey done in this regard. Might be more than that also. And more than 20,000 tube wells I already said, which are not regularized. And issues like, the more and more the groundwater is restricted, the challenges comes with the impurities, the contamination of that one. And the Jaipur city is presently facing the acute problem of fluoride and nitrate and TDS, high fluoride, high nitrate, and high TDS. And this is a big challenge because this is leading to the various kinds of diseases, like, the fluoride, like skeletal issues, the fluorosis issues, when we have the nitrate, high concentration of nitrate, like, it's a Bureau of Indian Standards specified 45 milligrams per liter. In many areas, it is around 200 milligrams per liter. In certain area, it has been found 2,000 milligrams per liter. Imagine. So methemoglobinemia, that is one diseases for the infants, is very dominant in some of the areas in the periphery of the Jaipur. So it's a big challenge. Then non-functional of metered connections. There are metered connections, but who cares? Like, the 60% of the meter connections are non-functional. The utility, the public health engineering department, that is not their priority area. They're like, there is a shortage of staff. They are like, revenue collection is just nominal, not systemized. So it's a big issue. Next slide, please. Illegal water connections. There are the regular water distribution networks, and people dismantle that one. They break it. They get their water through that one. And when the utility, the public health engineering department vigilance team goes there, there's a big issue. The politicians, the local corporators, they come out. And this is, I'm telling you, this is not a situation in Jaipur. This is dominant in almost every place in India, or maybe in the other developing nations also. And almost 70% of the Jaipur water supply has high TDS or has bacterial contamination, or both the issues. And this is the one thing. And 378 MLD wastewater generated in Jaipur, and only 235 MLD wastewater is treated. I tell you one very interesting thing. Right now, one of the biggest sewage treatment plant in Jaipur is at a place called Delavas that has 125 MLD sewage treatment capacity. Imagine right now 200 MLD of sewage going there. Out of 125, one unit is not working. Imagine 100 to 150 MLD of the wastewater coming back to the channel, and is used by the farmers for the farming of the vegetables and agriculture. And heavy metals issues came out long back, and High Court also banned that one. So I mean, there are no strict measures, so it's a big challenge. And inappropriate collection of revenue, nominal rates of water consumption from the consumers. Substantial increase in the number of multi-story buildings is also requiring higher water consumption. This is how the whole process goes in the developing nations. They keep on giving approval to the multi-story buildings. Nobody cares. Like, those multi-story buildings, residents like us, we are able to pay like, 3 to 4 euros per month is our water bill. And urban poor and the peri-urban areas, they have to rely on the water tankers, which are bringing water from unsafe sources, full of impurities, and giving rise to the water-related diseases and all those things. So this is a big challenge. Next slide, please. So coping mechanism, I already told you, Bisalpur Dam, like, it was started in 2004 with a grant from Asian Development Bank, JICA, and 275 MLD supplied from that one. And that was the first phase. And now we are looking for the phase 2. And where's the money? You just keep on borrowing money from the development banks, and you are under debt. This is how the scenario goes. And tube wells, and 100 MLD supplied through it out of total 500 MLD. And this is also tube wells. The more and more the water going down, the impurities are coming up. And this is again a challenge. Tanker transportation. Now you see, this is again a good business. You keep on flying the tankers, the water tankers moving into all the Jaipur city, and it's a big business. Everybody is getting, like, it's a good source of income. And where do they bring the water? Nobody knows, like, unsafe sources. And this is promoted, I mean, like, officially, unofficially by the government. Now, can you imagine a country like, India is, I mean, we have reached, like, developed in the very space and this and that. But on the other side, since independence, it's 70 years, every household is still looking for the water. We are grateful to our visionary, honorable Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi, who has, like, started this program, Nal Se Jal. Every house should get a water. Think after 70 years after the independence, we are looking for that one. But we are privileged that a leadership is there, which is looking into that one. And there are artificial recharge structures they are constructing, but look, they are just the tip of the iceberg. They need to do a lot of work. Okay, and the water quality assurance, yes, they are doing chlorination. It's generally done at every place in every water treatment system, but how much it is effective is a big challenge. But they are coping. I'm not all against this, but the thing is that people are getting water. Those who are connected with the utility, they are getting good water. Next slide, please. Yeah, conclusion. So supplying of safe, equitable, potable water to 3.5 million is the biggest challenge the PhD Rajasthan is facing. And most severe sufferers, I already said, are the urban poor, paying higher cost for the deteriorating quality of water. Though communities are willing to pay more if quality and quantity is better and improved. There has been some kind of survey in that regard also. But unfortunately, we don't have options to provide them. The most important thing which I realized, like, after so many years of working, the strong political will is the most important thing in the interest of the core of the common man, and with the strict measures. And if that is not there, it will have a big impact on the lives and the lives of the millions and the billions of people living in the in the developing nation. If there's a political stability, yes, there's a government coming, then there's a tendency to destabilize that government. And this is a common phenomena, and that happens, and that gives a big challenge to the, like, if any state government plans something, then the next thing, like, they don't know that whether after 6 months they will be stabilized or not. So it's a big challenge. I already said government of India's new merged ministry, Jal Shakti, an ambitious project to bring water by tap to every end user by the year 2024. This is indeed, like, now the merging of all the ministries of the water sector with the Jal Shakti ministry is one of the biggest thing which government of India has done. Lot of emphasis is right now given by the federal government, central government, and they are also trying to bring, like, reduce the corruption at the state level. Central government is one of the most dedicated, honest governments we have since independence in the last 7 years since Prime Minister Modi has come. But unfortunately, the states are not able to go with that kind of thing. I'm sorry to say, but that is how it is. That is how it is giving an impact on the lives of the poor people. And now it looks like by 24, Nal Se Jal, that will be water will be provided to every household, every user. And the most important thing, what I would like to say, is that effective coordination is the need of the time between federal ministry and the state government in the core interest of common man. This is applicable not only for Rajasthan but for the other states also. If there's a good coordination among the different governments, it will always help the common man, the poor man. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. So I'm further available for any kind of queries, questions from your side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. And we will come back certainly when we will have the questions, but we are very grateful for this opening of black box of the problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now let me introduce Professor Honoré Coman-Kauné, but in fact, I have to present also her team because she's leading a team of 3 geographers from Abidjan, from the University Félix Houphouët-Boigny, and from the Department of Geography. So we have a representation of the university with these different aspects. So please, I would please to introduce your other 2 colleagues, Mrs. Alida Adu, who is also a doctor in geography, urban geography, and teaching and doing research also, and specialize in urban activities, but on gender. And we hope next year for the other conference, we'll have that subject. And then we have also Dr. in Urban Geography at Abu Diagabate, and I hope I pronounce correct, and who also is teaching and researcher. So you have a really big think tank on geography at the university. Please, and your paper is extremely interesting because it brings us a major subject for omega cities in the role of water or the lack of water in the process of peri-urbanization, with this we will find in all cities, mega city we are studying. Please, the floor is yours.
Merci, Madame Gracila. Merci pour cette introduction.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Graciela. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure for me to take the floor today on behalf of my colleagues here. We are all from the Félix Houphouët-Boigny University of Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, and we have worked on this project which deals with an area which links Abidjan, the economic capital of the country, to a seaside resort. And our presentation is on the problems in the provision of drinking water as well as commercial activities for the city of Abidjan Grand Bassin, the big stretch of land between the two. And so our presentation is going to be divided up into four parts. We have an introduction, a methodology, results, and then conclusion. So Abidjan, the economic capital of Côte d'Ivoire, is experiencing accelerated urbanization of the order of 44%. And the population, which is 4,707,000 inhabitants, that is to say, the 21% of the total Ivoirian population. Now, the distance from the north to the south of the city of Abidjan is 40 kilometers, and from west to east, it's 26 kilometers. 3,700 hectares in surface area in 1965. This surface area is now 16,000 in 1980 and 44,200 hectares today. Now, this growth in surface area is a result of the peri-urbanization, which takes into account the progressive integration of rural areas, which hitherto had remained outside of the city. That is the case of this urbanization front, this stretch of land, which is in the peri-urban area of Abidjan. So there is this front which is experiencing a rapid integration into the city towards the town of Grand Bassam through an explosion of very attractive tourist activities because of its fine sandy beaches lined with coconut trees and the freshness of the seaside. However, these activities are encountering many activities, attract many tourists and visitors of the order of 331 on the weekdays and 487 on the weekends. So these activities, of course, are confronted with many difficulties, namely the supply of drinking water. So the question was to know how this seaside activity, which attracts so many people, how and where do they get their water from? So the objective of this study was to show the mode of supply for the seaside activities for this strip of land, this area. So the specific objectives was to identify the different types of seaside activities for this stretch of land, and then described how water was actually supplied for these activities. And finally, as a last specific objective, which was to bring out the prospects for a sustainable infrastructure for drinking water. Now, here you have in the map the city of Abidjan and Grand Bassam, as you can see, and these two cities are apart by 25 kilometers. Now, to have access to Grand Bassam from Abidjan, there are two roads. We have the first road, which corresponds to the old route, which is in red, and the second is in black, which is the new route, which is a highway which has recently been built. Now, our area of study is located around the former route, which is 8 kilometers in length. And this space is between the crossroads of the limits of Abidjan and the crossroads of the limits of Grand Bassam. So, as I said, the length considered is 8 kilometers. And this area of study encounters a lot of seaside activity. Next slide, please. So, we have used two methods in order to carry out this study. First of all, we have the first method, which is the documentary approach, which allowed us to consult a certain number of books, reports from seminars and memoirs and other documents and articles. The second method, second approach, was the collection of data through direct observation in the field, an inventory of the seaside activities, and sampling. Now, the sampling was carried out according to the route by route method. And the route by route method allowed us to identify that there were four equidistant stations away 2 kilometers from each other on this 8 kilometer section. And on each resort, we actually investigated the type of seaside activity that was exercised and the way in which they were actually supplied with water. Next slide, please. So, at the end to this methodology, we arrived at three main results. The first result presents the different types of activities that we actually identified on this area of study. And we counted 38 such activities, 4 restaurant hotels, 11 maki restaurants, sort of tentage, and 23 bungalows. Next slide, please. First pictures on this slide shows you the images of the restaurants, hotels, the hotel with its restaurant, and hotel rooms. And the second one is a restaurant, what we call the maki, which is different in terms of its standing, and also there are no rooms, no accommodation. And third picture is the kind of restaurant maki where again there is no accommodation. The fourth one shows you the view of a bungalow. And the bungalow is a rental space for the visitors so they can actually relax, but this space has no other provision of service. The customer therefore has to bring everything that is required to actually spend the day. Next slide, please. So the second result of our study tells about the types of equipment actually used in these seaside activities. And we have two kinds. You've got the private water towers and wells. The hotels and restaurants, we actually counted the 6 private water towers and 9 wells. So on the whole, you have the restaurants, the maki restaurants use private water towers and wells, which 9 and 4 for the maki restaurants, which represents 54% for the water towers and 46% for the wells, specifying that the bungalows have no equipment whatsoever for water supply. Next slide, please. Here you see the different types of water tanks that are used. As you can notice, there are water tanks with different storage capacities, which go from 1,000 liters to more than 1,000 liters. And on the right-hand side, you can see the view of a well. Next slide, please. Now, the third result of our study evoked the prospects of the equipment that are planned for this area. Now, the study area we know is not covered by the water supply, official water supply system. The network that actually supplies water to the town of Gombasam, next doors, comes from a drinking water production plant in a locality just after the town, situated just outside of the town, and provides water to this town, but limiting itself just to, to the limits. And our area of study starts just after the communal village of Gombasam, the city of Gombasam. So what you need to know is that the water supply equipment is planned for by the state. So feasibility studies have been carried out where with the making of certain number of infrastructures. This study, the feasibility study, ended about a month ago, about the end of the month of October. The feasibility studies are now completed, and therefore, 2 water tanks, water towers are planned to be put up for this area with a modification of the diameter of the water pipe, which is for the moment of 300 centimeters, and the diameter will go up to 900 centimeters, which will actually allow for providing water to the area beyond Khombasam and therefore covering our area of study. The tendering phase for the contract for the getting of this infrastructure in place is underway and will be ending by the end of December. So the beginning of the work is scheduled for February 2021. So in terms of conclusion, we can say that the lack of drinking water supply system is a real constraint for this seaside activity in our study area. This obliges them to have recourse to different modes of supplies, such as private water tanks and private water castles and wells. Now, this situation, which is far from being a lasting solution, and for the final settlement of this problem, the ideal, of course, is the requisite investment in the water distribution infrastructure extension network to cover the area under study for a sustainable solution. We'd like to thank you very much for your kind attention.
là. Merci beaucoup et surtout, j'ai vu arriver plusieurs...
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. I've seen a number of questions that were raised by your presentation and that I'm sure you'll be able to answer. I will now give the floor to our next speaker, Antoine Zadecki, who is project manager at Eau de Paris, Paris Drinking Water Supply Agency, and he will talk about more specifically water and solidarity. So Antoine Sadisky is here under has a dual qualification. He has a master's in international affairs and also a master's degree in environmental engineering, which puts you in good stead to carry out such interdisciplinary work.
And thank you to Omega for giving me this opportunity to talk about our experience in Haute Paris in using integrated water management to tackle our environmental challenges. Could you, yes, display the presentation? So a brief overview of my presentation. You can display the whole summary, please. I'll first have a few words about Haute Paris and the context of the drinking water supply, of course. Then I move on to the challenges that we have faced in the past and that we face today. Before talking more about resource protection that we used to address those challenges, then I'll go a little bit deeper into that subject and talk about the technical tools we use to work with farmers. I'll stress also the approach that we have adopted over the past few years with territorial development. And I'll end by talking about the new path of action we are trying to follow to face ever increasing challenges as regards to water quality. Next, please. So Eau de Paris, this is the biggest public water utility in France, and it's the municipal agency in charge of catchment, treatment, and distribution of drinking water to Paris. So a lot of consumers, a lot of employees, and a lot of water, drinking water every day. It's actually also a huge historical heritage since a big part of the infrastructure was built in the 19th and 20th, early 20th century. So, so interesting to visit if you have the opportunity. Next, please. Now, this is the drinking water supply. The map does not display so good on the PowerPoint, but I hope you see it right. So the water supply relies half on groundwater and half on surface water. Now, groundwater abstraction points are located quite far from Paris. It's the area colored on the map that you can see. So they are quite big territories to work on as well. And as they are rural territories, water quality there is mainly impacted by nitrates and pesticides. Next, please. So, so as we see nitrates and pesticides today, historically, the first concerns about water quality were not agricultural ones, but infectious diseases mainly in the 19th century, early 20th century. But as you all know, the 60s and the 70s brought about the farming revolution with mechanization and massive use of chemicals, which gave birth to dramatic rise in nitrates and pesticides rates in water, as you can see on the graph on the left, which shows ancient records of nitrate rates in water, going sometimes over legal quality standards. Now, water, of course, is treated especially for pesticides and other parameters, but to reach good quality on the tap. But we understood at that point that we chose to a different approach in complement to treatment. Next slide, please. To actually ensure that we could use our resources on the long term and prevent them from degrading further. So this is why in the 90s we started working with farmers to complement our treatment operations. At first we had a somewhat sectorial approach, because we started optimizing fertilization. We worked on finding pesticide substitutes. We worked on hydrological solutions like buffer strips along streams. But next please, we quickly understood that we had to adopt an integrated approach and consider the farm as a whole system. So we had to address input reduction, of course, pesticides and nitrates, but also crop rotations, types of crops, cover crops, and economic sustainability, and balance it with efficiency on water protection. Now we started to rely a lot on research and experts. We started to use financial aid through CAPS, agri-environmental measures, to give the farmers the nudge they needed to change. And that's when we first observed results on water quality. Next, please. So we developed this approach through the 2010s and improved it. And we reach a kind of integrated system composed of several tools that we use with the target of giving the farmers the keys they make to change, the keys to make the change they wish themselves, and thereby protecting water resource. So we do the tools that we use, especially through our counselors on sites, are technical counseling, individual or collective counseling, group thinking as well. And we also try to support local exchange networks, because we know that knowledge sharing and experience sharing is a huge driving of change as well on territories. There's also land planning, which can be land purchase from Haute-Paris, or buffer zones, for example. We work a lot on developing upstream and downstream circuits as well, to ensure that farmers have economic outlets to sell their products, especially new crops. And then there's a financial aid, which I put at the center because it's our main focus of innovation at the moment. But it could actually be anywhere else on the circle. The point here being that taken separately, all of these tools, they're not really efficient, but when you combine them, you can achieve, they complement each other, and they contribute to setting dynamics of change on the territories and between farmers. And our target is actually that these dynamics become autonomous at the end of the day. So for now, it has been quite successful, because we can count more than 17,000 hectares of low input farming system on our territories, among which around 10,000 hectares of organic farming. There's one territory where we recorded going from 1% of organic farming in 2008 to almost more than 20% in 2020, which is interesting. Next slide, please. And talking about setting dynamics through these tools, what is even more interesting is using this approach as an instrument for territorial development, and thereby intensifying resource protection. And here we touch upon the issue of territorial solidarity. What we have tried to do over the past few years is actually making the resource protection an opportunity for these territories and for farmers, opportunities of socio-economic development, environmental development, and sustainability of the territories, resilience of these territories in general, which is really interesting to drive sustainable change. So we do that basically by experimenting a lot with farmers, evaluating our experimentations of new techniques, of new crops. We try to constantly seek new solutions to adapt to new challenges, to adapt to diverse situations on the ground. And also, more importantly, more important than finding solutions on our own is also building the capacity of farmers to find their own solutions, because at the end of the day, they know their own job. And this allows us to set long-term development dynamics. Next slide, please. Yes, and at the moment, oh yeah, yes, thanks. So yes, at the moment, we have engaged a change in farming system with 150 farmers, but so it's quite good, but we want to, of course, go further. And we also have to face increasing challenges, new challenges. So that's why we're trying to also find new paths of actions. The first one at the moment is our new financial aid scheme based on the principle of payments for ecosystem services that has been freshly notified to the European Commission as a state aid scheme, which is the first time that a French public water agency does it in France. Now, the specificity of this new aid scheme compared to CAP's agri-environmental measures, for example, is that it is designed, actually it was designed with farmers as well. It is designed to local contexts and farms. We sign long contracts to ensure long-term transformation of farms. And of course, we really want to achieve high efficiency and water quality. So this is why our measures address every aspect of the farming system to actually produce an impact with high standards to meet for farmers. And yes, monitoring of impact will be very important to assess the efficiency of this aid scheme. Now, the second lead that we want to follow is also improve and support the networks of farmers that can form on the territories, farmers who protect water, because we know that experience sharing, knowledge sharing, and setting good example is the key often to drive sustainable change of practice. Next, please. And just to mention the other leads that we also work on, but I won't go into details now, buffer wetlands and work on hedgerows and trees in farming models. Now, moving on to my conclusion. So just briefly, what I wanted to say is that forest integrated water management, next please, allow us to make resource protection part of the production process, to give it the means to achieve better water quality. Of course, we do that by changing farming systems on our catchment territories to protect water. But what is also interesting is that it is an opportunity to support these rural territories, and it is an opportunity to give those territories where we abstract water, to give them back what we take somehow. And it's I think it's a good example of territorial solidarity and more generally of how we can face environmental challenges collectively, because we all know that probably we'll have to face environmental challenges collectively and not separately. Thank you very much for your attention, and the questions are welcome.
Well, I think that we are going to have questions for the three panelists, the theme of three panelists. And I thank you very much, Antoine Sadisky, for your presentation, which gives an input, a different perspective at our discussion on solidarity and service continuity, what could be the connection. Since we were working on Antoine's Sadisky case, I would suggest to take one question for him, and the second one that is for the team led by Honoré Kwame, and then for Professor Valles, and then we, if the time allows us, we can take more questions from the chat. Okay, so the first question that we received is, What are the lessons from your case study in relation to sustainable solidarity? Could you develop an example of financial schemes, for example, for ecosystem services?
So about, yes, territorial solidarity, it's basically what I said in my conclusion is that we really have, if we want to achieve a change to get better water quality, we really have to work with territories. We really have to work hand in hand with farmers, and I mean, it has to be beneficial for both parts. It has to be beneficial for us on water quality, but it has to be an opportunity of development also for these territories. That and also to because there is sometimes a huge gap between cities and rural territories, and there's also a lot of misunderstandings between those territories. So it's really important also, not only for water, but for other environmental challenges like biodiversity or climate change, that we close the gap with these rural territories, that we all depend on each other. And about the financial aid scheme, so I talked a little bit about it. It's our the aid scheme that we are implementing at the moment comprises 3 different measures. So basically, the principle is that farmers engage in measures, they engage in practices, specific practices with specific targets that are set, and in exchange they are afforded an annual payment on the surface of their farm. The condition being that they respect the engagement they took, of course.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I will move down for the question for the next speaker, and to Dr. Honoré Conan Kaume, there is a question. Why is the study area not served, and how do providers of these commercial activities guarantee a service? There is a complement to the question is, do they use more than one source for supply? Ah, vous voulez que je vous la dise en français? You have, vous l'avez la traduction?
Do you have the interpreting?
Pourquoi l'aire d'études n'est pas desservie?
Why isn't the field, what isn't the area supplied by those who are providing commercial activities? Are they using multiple supplies to get access to water? And who controls the quality of water? Well, thank you for this question.
Le service d'eau publique ne couvre pas la zone
The
d'études.
public utility does not give access to water in this area. However, there are many resorts and seaside activities that attract many visitors. And so they have to find strategies to get access to water to develop their activities. So they drill wells, and then they store the water in water towers. However, this water is treated by the SODESI, the Water Management Institute. So there is a treatment of the water so that it can actually meet the standards that we want in the country. So this has a cost for seaside activities because they need to buy the equipment to treat the water. They have to pay for it. So when it comes to official water supply, it would actually be cheaper to have access to public water because it would be cheaper than drilling new wells and acquiring the equipment to treat the water so it can be turned into drinking water. Thank you very much.
Did people have the translation? Did you have the translation? Okay. I go back to the question of Professor Valles, and how much, in fact, I think there are three sub-questions in that question. How much is the per capita piped and not piped water supply in informal for the residents? And what is the situation concerning discontinuity or intermittent supply?
Yeah, thank you. Per capita thing is always a very tricky question. Talk to the utility public health engineering department, and based on their data, theoretically, they say that they supply 500 mld of the water to the residents of the Jaipur city. And with 500 mld means they have calculated based on the one of the Bisalpur dam, which is 120 kilometers from Jaipur city, that is 275 mld. They through the tankers 100 mld, and through tankers and the tube wells it's 100 mld. So 125 mld is still a deficit. So but they say that that is provided by the different tankers, unauthorized people. So if we go with the PhD data, it's coming out around 100 to 125 liters per capita per day. But in practical, truly speaking, it doesn't work there. People are getting almost, there has been some survey which says 50 to 60 liters per capita per day, because we don't have a SCADA system here which can monitor, which can regularize, which can see the pressures. And many areas they use the booster pumps to lift the water, and then the other areas they don't get that kind of water. So it's a big challenge. So whatever the preliminary information the survey has come, it says around 50 to 60 liters per capita per day. That is the one thing. Second thing regarding the service continuity. Can you just repeat the question? I'm sorry, I couldn't get through that one question.
Whatever. So
yeah, service continuity is again a challenge, because because non-revenue water leakages in the system, and illegal connections, booster pumps, all those, they all interrupt in the service continuity. And sometimes, when there's less rainfall, where the dam is also depending on the rainfall system, and if there is less rain in a particular year, in that case the service continuity, in some maybe in some areas they don't get water for 1 day or 2 days also. It happened in the past also. So there are so many issues, so many reasons behind that for the service continuity. And but in that case, what happens, the illegal, unauthorized water tankers, they are doing, their business very effectively. And anywhere there is a demand for the water system, drinking water, people order those water tankers. They get that water for 7 to 10 euros per tanker, and that is how they fulfill per week, I would like to say. So a poor man, urban poor, would be paying around 30 to 40 euros per month, whereas people like us would be paying around 4 to 5 euros per month for the potable, safe water coming at our households. So I mean, there is a big issue of the service continuity, and it depends on all this rainfall patterns, how the, the functioning of the water tankers, the boosters, the illegal connections. If there's a leakage, many times they dismantle the whole system also at a particular place. So that also interrupts that water supply continuity.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor. So before closing this session, and before you read what you are going to receive as questions, maybe each of one want to make a short comment on the subject they developed, or a contribution, final contribution, where we are moving towards.
Okay, one short comment from my side. Urban poor are the most severe sufferers of the water supply systems in the developing nations, and they have to pay a huge cost. But on the other side, they are willing to pay a higher cost if the quality and the quantity is improved.
Thank you. Yes, we have noticed that in many places. Professor Kwame. Professeur Kwame, si vous voulez un commentaire final, voilà, avant qu'on clôture la séance.
One last comment before we close. Well, if the government has not been able to provide supply to potable water to this area so far, well, it has not been done because there were not that many tourist activities. And it is extremely expensive to give access to water. There are major investments to be made. So the problem is that there is currently no real incentive for the state to give access to water in this area. However, when you look at the infrastructure project,
il va maximiser, il va rendre rentable les investissements par le nombre
it is
croissant.
said that investments could become actually interesting because the number of activities will be increased.
Yes. Yeah, a final comment that maybe will allow me to answer a question that was asked by a participant about the costs and the trade-offs between, if I understood correctly, between not doing resource protection maybe and treat water further. So it's really hard to know because we never know if we do nothing, how water will degrade further. But and sometimes the cost of all of this, the cost of resource protection compared to the cost of treatment, can vary a lot from agencies to agency. For agencies, for example, for a big public company like us, the interest of doing resource protection is not so great as for a smaller company, but still we think that it is really important to use resource protection and to improve resource protection, because on the long term, it will be, at the end of the day, it will be more costly to rely only on treatment. And also because we have it's a policy choice made because we also have a responsibility for the future use of our resources.
All right, thank you very much. And so before closing, I thank you very much for your participation, inputs, and we hope to keep in touch. And if any problem in the finding of the question you have received, don't hesitate to contact us. And I invite you to come to watch the session for tomorrow that I think we will complete and move further in our research and management of megacities, water, and global change. Thank you very much.
Chers orateurs, oratrices, participantes et participants, nous vous remercions pour votre présence et vous donnons rendez-vous demain à 13h, heure de Paris, pour de nouvelles sessions.